It's another day here at the Comeback Team Studios. And this is your host, Bek Lover. And you're watching another episode of the Bek Lover podcast, where I talk about all types of things that are going on in the world. And today, this is a special episode dedicated to the most recent episode of the Patrick Bet David podcast, where he had the Polish minister. He's a part of the European Parliament, and he had a lot to say. And I am talking about the man known as Dominik Tarczyński. I just finished watching this entire episode on the PBD podcast, and this man right here, if I'm being honest, if I was looking at it from the Polish perspective, I agree with a lot of what he believes in. I agree with a lot of what he's trying to do for his people. But I do not agree when he basically targets Muslims with his rhetoric. He basically equates people that are of Muslim background or religion as all criminals, all rapists, etc., etc. That I have a problem with. So in this episode, I'm going to go through a few of his clips, and I'm going to quickly respond to this podcast and give you my perspective on, yes, I agree a lot of what he's talking about and what he believes in and what he's fighting for. I find him to be a phenomenal speaker, very passionate. He's got a sense of humor, and he's also very well at speaking. But where he's dropping the ball, in my opinion, and where he's not being fair is this broad stroke, which is the very definition of racism, Islamophobia, whatever it is, where you group an entire group of people and basically judge them the same. You say they're all the same. Every American is the same. Every black person is the same. Every Muslim's the same. Every Jewish person is the same. And that is not the truth. And I don't care how many people of a certain ethnicity may have done something wrong. That still doesn't mean they're all bad. And I don't care who we're talking about. So I'm going to play some clips, and then I'm going to get into this. So the first clip is, and he's very proud. So just a little background. Poland was very strict since 2015, where we saw massive amounts of refugees. They can call them migrants all they want. Now, are there people from other places that are impoverished or have issues that took advantage of these wars going on in the Middle East and blended into these groups of people? And there's definitely criminals that blended in. But to say that the overwhelming majority of migrants are criminals or rapists couldn't be further from the truth. One thing they all are is desperate. They're coming from a place of trauma. They experienced extreme violence. They lost their lives, their stability overnight. And within those compounds, you have people that are suffering from PTSD. You have people who are criminals who probably got out of prisons from these war zones and blended into these refugees, okay, and do commit crimes. Here in New York City, you guys have been watching me for a long time. I am very against, for my own, just so you understand, I am against open borders for any country. I believe a country's sovereignty should be respected. I believe people should be screened, so we're not letting in psychos and rapists and criminals and war criminals from other countries. I do not agree with the policy of the open border here in the United States of America that's been going on with this current administration, where millions of people have poured into the U.S., dramatically shifting the demographics of our nation. I see them getting money, food, all types of stuff, where many Americans right now are struggling to make ends meet. Many people I know are fucking struggling. And some people that just came over a border with no due process, nothing to screen them. Every one of my ancestors had to go through hell to get here and borrow money and pay their dues and sleep on people's couches. And these people just get propped up. New York City's hotel rates have not dropped at all, even though tourism has dropped dramatically over the last 5 years. We were a city that got $100 million tourists a year, and the streets are empty. It is fucking quiet here compared to what it was before they closed the world down in 2019 to save us from something that they actually created themselves. And we can't say for certain if they released it on purpose, but they did purposely fund the place that it was created in. This is a fact now. In any event, so I want to clarify to those of you that watched my last episode about migrants in the UK, for those that are watching this episode about what's going on in Poland and what Dominik had to say, I just want to kind of paint the whole picture here and give you my perspective and analysis of why, even though I do agree with a lot of what Dominik has to say, he is absolutely wrong. I denounce his racism and basically comparing all Muslims to terrorists and rapists without first looking in the fucking mirror of who created a lot of this mess. And if he looked in the mirror, and we're going to talk about that, we're going to talk about how in 2003 Poland sent troops to help these Western nations invade Iraq and create 1 million people to lose their lives and become homeless and lose everything they had, and created a lot of these migrants, because then Syria got destabilized and the Arab Spring started, and that's where the migrants majority are coming from, okay? So until you can look in the fucking mirror, you don't have much of a foundation to stand on. Now, do you have the right to want to protect your border, not allow millions of people in? Yes. Do you have the right to take a world faith of 2 billion people that include even white people and Europeans and compare us all to rapists and criminals and fucking terrorists? No. And for that, I fucking denounce you. I can also agree with what's right about what you said. And I am not for open borders, not for Poland, not for America, not for the UK at all. Because it does impact the quality of life. There is crime happening every single day in New York City. And guess what? These migrants came from South America. And they are raping fucking 9-year-old girls and 12-year-old girls in New York City. It's been happening all the time. And they have been migrants that have shot at police officers. Because there's always going to be a criminal element that takes advantage of an open border. But I won't sit here and say all Latinos, all people from South America are criminals and rapists. No, they're not. Many of them are very hardworking and do the jobs that most of us Americans don't want to do. We don't want to wash cars down the block. So people also take advantage of these desperate people and pay them fucking minimum wage, sometimes even less than what they're supposed to legally, so you can get your car washed. Like I'm saying, there's many levels to this, but I would never say that all Latinos, all people from Mexico are rapists and criminals. No, they're not. The average Mexican's very hardworking. I've seen how hard they can work. I've seen, without them, I don't know how America would even operate. But why is it when it comes to my faith, I have to be compared to rapists? I have to be compared to a terrorist. I have to be compared. It's because of people like this, leaders that are brought into shows like Patrick Bet-David's podcast, like Valuetainment, who seems to, I don't know, putting out a lot of anti-Muslim content. In my opinion, I'm not saying that he's making the people say these things, but he sure seems to find the best people who have, great voices to articulate. And every time there's someone representing the Muslim side of things, they could barely speak English, man. They could barely speak English. Hey, Patrick Bet-David, I've tried emailing you. I've tried messaging you. I've Instagrammed you. Your co-host follows me, Vinny. I am here, and I would like to speak about migration, America, Islam, Christianity, and what is going on in the world. And I think I have a lot to say that will not incite hatred like guys like Dominik, not fuel the fans of hatred and racism. But I think I have a very compelling story on how to bring people together and try to start focusing our attention on the people that create these problems, that lead to open borders, that lead to migration, that lead to millions of people losing their lives. And to not even address any of that, Dominik, is why you are not telling the whole story. You are not telling the truth. And when it comes to Islam, you have no right to speak. Because until you criticize your Catholic faith, which was swept under the rug, as thousands of children all around the world were molested by clergymen and higher officials and cardinals hid these crimes from the world. And until you speak about that and attack, and so I guess all Catholics are pedophiles. I mean, that's my point, guys. I don't believe that. I've said that many times on my show. Why is it I can show respect to a faith? Because first of all, you can't be a pedophile and be a Catholic. You can't be a terrorist and be a Muslim. There's no such thing. You cannot take innocent life. You cannot hurt a child and be a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew. This is literally what I am world famous for saying. So Patrick Bet David, when are you going to let me come on the show and set the record straight, my brother? When are you going to let the Muslims have a fair representative who can actually articulate? Maybe Bassem Youssef was the last person, I think that's his last name, who just got his account off of X, and we don't really know why, and apparently his life and family was in danger, which is why his account was taken down. I do not know, but there is so much going on. There are so many double standards, and who always pays the price, and who's always painted as evil, because these comments you're making, Dominik, will only fuel more hatred in Europe and cause innocent people who happen to be of Muslim descent or Pakistani descent or of Bangladeshi descent to be the targets of criminal, attacks. The local populations of Germany and the UK will take out their anger, which really should be towards their politicians for creating these policies and creating the wars that gave us all these migrants that lost their families, lost their homes. And then the same leaders said, oh, don't worry, come to Europe. Come on in, wide open border. No, we're actually on the same side here. I bet you the average Iraqi and the average Syrian would be like, if you European countries with America would just have stayed out of our fucking country and not bombed us to smithereens, especially on false pretenses in the case of Iraq, when there was no weapons of mass destruction, maybe my family would still be alive, my house would still be here, and I wouldn't hate you. And I wouldn't have to come to your country. And maybe, I don't know, what would you do if someone dropped a bomb on your family, like if you lived in Gaza? What would you do? What would you do if someone wiped out your entire family, but you survived? Drop a comment. Would you want revenge? If you lost everything and your life's gone in the flash of a fucking Tomahawk missile, what would you do? So there's so many layers to this onion, but your broad stroke, your simple name calling and equating every Muslim on earth to fucking terrorist, is it not terrorist or terrorism to invade a country, a sovereign nation, and drop bombs on them and destroy their infrastructure and leave them in poverty and no electricity and fucking destroy them on a lie, like weapons of mass destruction, like George Bush and Tony Blair said, and then be surprised when these people want revenge or to attack or to counter? Like, seriously? But let's get into it.
The agenda was, the meeting was very important because we had 300 people who represent different organizations, and they are.
Now, I don't know which clip I'm playing here. This is the one I wanted to play.
If you can play it.
How many refugees has Poland taken?
0.
And you're proud of that?
If you are asking me, if you are asking me about Muslims illegal immigration, none. Not even one will come to Poland. Not even one if it's illegal. We took over 2 million Ukrainians who are.
Did you take Ukrainians because they're white and they're not Muslim? How are you not an Islamophobe? How is it that you will not take one refugee when your country sent 2,000 soldiers in 2013? I'd like to read the history here, Dominik, for you. Your country sent 2,000 soldiers, or if not more. Let's go look at the Polish involvement in the Iraq war. Okay, let's go look at this. Here we go. I'm sorry, folks, because, I'm a one-man army at times. Here we go. On March 17, 2003, the Polish president, Alexander Kwasniewski, announced that Poland would send about 2,000 troops to the Persian Gulf and take part in the invasion of Iraq. Dominik Tarczynski. So your people invaded a sovereign nation on false pretenses that never existed, weapons of mass destruction, which led to the death of 1 million of those people. Your involvement, I don't care, 2,000, 5,000. You sent people from your country before these migrants came to invade your country, Dominik. You guys sent people from your country to help those people be destroyed, killed, invaded, occupied, which led to the complete destabilization of the Middle East, Dominik. The 2,000 Polish soldiers that you guys sent to the Middle East helped destabilize the entire Middle East, which led to the migrants that are now flooding into Europe by the politicians that you walk into the same building with who now have opened their borders. So your hatred towards Muslims and that should really be directed towards your European counterparts and your former president who helped destabilize and destroy the entire Middle East. That is my official response to the Patrick Bet David podcast. Other than that, Dominik, I'm on the same page for you. Nuclear family. What you do in your bedroom is your business. What a nation wants to do with its borders, put up walls and protect it, I support you in that. No one should be able to just walk into your country and become a part of society without being screened and welcomed. I fully support you. Also in the UK, I support that. What I don't support is racism and hatred targeted towards desperate groups of people who were made desperate by your politicians. So before you go beat up and kill a poor Muslim guy or a woman because she's covered and beat the shit out of her just because she's covered, she may have even been born in your country. You won't know because you're an ignorant, racist piece of shit. Before you fuel more hatred, which just keeps leading to more and more violence, start with how these people became migrants. Where did it all come from? And he mentioned also that like Germany, right, brought a lot of
people want to know. And then Poland ranks favorably in terms of public safety in the 2022 Global Peace Index.
And the lowest unemployment, the highest GDP after COVID. That's official data from Eurostat.
Kidding me?
It's true. It's true. The lowest unemployment in European Union, the highest GDP after COVID, one of the lowest public debts. That's official data from Eurostat. How? Well, first of all, safety. I was very, very straight about our policy. As you know, zero illegal migrants. That was our government's policy for 8 years. Zero means not even one. Not even one if it's illegal. If you want to come to Poland, that was very straight. If you want to come to Poland, you can come. We are not North Korea. You can come and visit. You can come and work. You can be legally. So you have to prove who you are. You have to submit your documents. You have to ask for a visa. Then you will have permission to stay for 3 or 6 months or a year or whatever. And that's fine. If you pay taxes, if you want to contribute to our society, we don't mind. But it's up to us if we want you. It's not up to illegals. And that is why when you see Sweden, Germany, France, and others, there is such a huge difference that when I'm back home after a week in Brussels, because we European parliamentarians are in Brussels the whole week, so I'm going back home for weekends. I just want to kiss the land, my homeland. It's so beautiful. And I'm not saying that.
I gotta say, I agree with a lot of what he stands for. Okay, my only issue with him is this broad stroking of Muslims. It's wrong, Dominik. It's wrong, especially if you can acknowledge how your country helped destabilize and kill millions of people, creating millions of these migrants. That's called karma. Maybe Europe is getting its karma for once. Maybe Europe, with all its invasion, colonizing, hundreds of millions of people, India alone lost over 40 to 100 million people, estimates, during the British Empire. Maybe some of that fucking karma is coming back to you people. It still doesn't mean I think it's right and your borders should be open. But before you Brits, before you Polacks, or Polish, sorry, because I forgot, people make jokes. Before you Polish people, before you Italians get angry, first ask one question. Was my government involved in invading countries in the Middle East? Yes or no? Did my country send military aid? Did my country give money, even if they didn't physically go? Did they sponsor that war that led to the destabilization of the Middle East? In most of those countries, the answer would be yes. You sent money, you sent hardware, you sent military equipment, you sent personnel. So if you were the contributing factor in destroying those nations' sovereignty, you have to be the biggest hypocrite in the world that you're upset now that these desperate people, which is the overwhelming majority of migrants, still doesn't mean you should take them all in. But maybe you should stop invading countries and there won't be any refugees. And he uses the word refugee also over and over and over again. Germany and other places have another reason why they allow migration in. Because the number one reason why they allow migration in is because their population is not having children. Here's an article by the World Economic Forum, Cash for Babies, how Europe is tackling its falling birth rate. I find it funny how we seem to be overpopulated based on what these organizations tell us, but in Europe, they're not overpopulated. They're not even making enough children. Japan is not making enough children. China has a problem with making children. And Elon Musk has spoken a lot about this also. So they want us to believe on one hand, the earth is overcrowded, we're having too many kids, there's not enough resources, and then meanwhile you can read articles like this from these same groups that want you to believe this and climate change, that they're paying European countries to have children. No, the problem is the European countries are so degenerated. They're becoming like Weimar Germany before World War II. And just so you understand here, in the far north of Europe, Finnish parents are being paid to have babies. The municipality of Mikkala, I can't say their language, was paying parents $3,242 per baby, but now has increased that to $11,000 per child. Other European countries are pursuing similar policies as they try to reverse the continent's falling birth rate. 19 of the world's 20 youngest countries are in Africa. So between 1967 and 2017, the fertility rate for women in the European Union fell from 2.6 babies to 1.6. That is catastrophic. Because if you're only having one baby and there's two parents, you're not even replacing the two parents. You need to have at least 3 children to maintain, right? To maintain the status quo with demographics and ethnicities. These birth rates have dropped so low throughout the white European countries. Is it the Muslims that are making you guys not have kids? Because most of the reason Germany and these other countries allowed all these immigrants to come in was because they didn't have enough young people to work these jobs that you guys claim that they're taking from you. My family that migrated to Germany worked in factories. He probably died of lung cancer. That's what the doctors are stating, from working in the factory that he worked in Stuttgart to build shit for your economy. My cousin's probably dead because of that. So he went there legally, I guess, and became a citizen and all that bullshit. But my point is, you know, the real reason the European Union is allowing all these migrants in is because they realize that they can't even reverse the decline in birth rate because nobody wants to get married anymore because this Western culture of eating McDonald's, jerking off, and fucking prostitutes has made people not want to have kids anymore. So, and I need a little sip of water here. Maybe the reason these countries are allowing all these migrants in is because they know that there's no way to reverse their birth rate. You can't force people to get married and want to have kids. And when the cost of living is so fucking high, I've been to Germany so many times. It is so expensive. It was expensive before inflation. Switzerland, my God. These people don't want to get married. They don't want the responsibility. They want to go to the discotheque every Saturday and drink and enjoy and dance. I've never experienced more racism in my life than when I visited Germany. They wouldn't allow me into nightclubs. Even though I spoke perfect English, born and raised in America, American passport, they told me, 9, Albanian. They wouldn't let me in because they knew my last name was Albanian. Can you believe that shit? The Germans also have an expression. The Germans have an expression called Ausländer. Ausländer means outsider. And amongst themselves, they treat each other better. People that are outsiders are looked down upon by the Germans. I would say, you know, like I said, I get it. You don't want your country being overrun. You don't want the demographic being changed. I agree with you. But you're targeting your hatred towards the wrong people. You're targeting the desperate ones. You should be targeting the assholes wearing suits, flying on private jets while they tell you there's a climate problem. You should be targeting the guys wearing beautiful suits, staying in the best hotels, drinking and laughing when they're off camera, $1,000 bottles of wine. Same thing with our politicians here in the U.S. Borders wide open, billions of dollars. $5 billion spent in my city in New York, while crime has skyrocketed, and mostly from migrants. But they weren't Muslim migrants this time. They were Latinos. Like I said, not all Latinos are rapists and murderers and criminals, right? Like, cool, you know? They're coming from Salvador, from Guatemala. I don't look at every Guatemalan and say they're all rapists and killers. No, there's criminals that take advantage of that. So your hatred that you're spurring between the two religions and Christianity, it's not the Muslims' fault that your birth rate is in such decline that you have allowed these people to come into your countries, Germany and the UK, because your citizens don't want to have families anymore. They're too busy watching MTV, dancing to Cardi B, drinking, eating McDonald's, and banging a new person every 2 days. If you want proof of that, prostitution is legal in countries across Europe, but it's nothing like what you think. I don't know. What is it like? I've been to Europe. It is cheaper to have sex with a prostitute in Germany than it is to have a nice dinner. It is literally cheaper. You can literally go to a place called Paradise Club. Look it up. I don't know. I've never been there, but look it up. You can go to the Paradise Sauna. You pay $70 to get in. They give you a buffet, food, as much as you can eat, and then it's $50 for any woman you want for an hour. $50 to take advantage of a woman, because most of those women are trafficked, even though it's legal in your countries. Those women come from other parts of the world, and they have pimps that still take all their money. Just because it's legal doesn't mean the woman is not being used, abused, and destroyed. And because your citizens want prostitution to be legal, because it makes it harder, right, for a pimp and criminals to get away with it when they don't have beautiful places like the Paradise Sauna. It makes it harder for these women to be trafficked. And for those of you that go to massage parlors here in the U.S. and get your happy ending, I got a news flash for you. That woman is being taken advantage of. That woman was forced to come into that room, massage you, and then do things to you. She was forced to do it, which means you are physically abusing another human being just because they smile. Because if they don't smile, maybe their family back home gets killed. Maybe something horrible happens if they don't pay off their debt. And many of them are indentured servants that are brought from Asia, brought from Eastern Europe, brought from the Caucasus. And if they don't repay their debt, something bad happens to their family. Sometimes they're even sold into debt by their own family to pay off a debt they own to organized crime. Your citizens are the ones indulging in deadly sins. It's cheaper to sleep with a different woman. And they're very stunning. If you go, I've walked through the red light district to see it. It was amazing to me when I was visiting my family in Germany. And they're like, do you want to see the red light district? I said, yes, I'd like to see it. They walked me through, and women are put in the glasses of these stores like butchers hang up cattle for sale. And there's all these men coming out. This was, I think I was in Dusseldorf that time. And I see all these men coming out like this. Their faces were covered. And I'm like, why are all these people? It was kind of scary. Like I said, I've never seen anything like this. This doesn't exist in America. But it will soon, probably. It will soon. They want to demoralize us. They'll make drugs legal, alcohol, soon prostitution. You can bet your life on it. Even though every town has a massage parlor, we still have illegal brothels all over, women being taken advantage of. I'm not talking about doing OnlyFans. I'm talking about women that are sold into slavery to perform these acts in legal places in Europe, because no normal woman would do this, I promise you. Okay, and they're not all mentally ill. Okay? So when I was there and I see everyone wearing masks, they're wearing masks, I asked my cousin, I said, where are all these men wearing masks? Oh, those are married. There was more men that were covered like this than not covered, because they're embarrassed. They don't want to be seen. Imagine, because they know they're taking advantage of these women from all over Europe, from all over the world. It's $50 an hour. You could do that every day of the week, and you would only spend 30 times 50, $1,500 to sleep with a different woman every day. This is why your men don't want to get married. This is why your family structure has collapsed in your Christian nations. This is why maybe Christians should look in the mirror, so-called Christians and Christian governments, and make this type of filth illegal and fight against it, because it's immoral, from the one that's being forced to do it to the one that's paying for it. And the one that's paying for it is more guilty than anyone, because if no one paid for it, the industry wouldn't exist. You are taking advantage of these women. So maybe if you guys fought against this immorality, your family structure wouldn't have collapsed, and you wouldn't need Muslim immigrants to come and work the jobs like you needed the Turks after World War II to rebuild Germany. You guys want to paint things in one picture. But paint the whole picture,
are
Dominik.
leading. First
Paint
of
the whole
all,
picture. Paint the whole picture. This is my official response to the Patrick Bet David podcast, valuetainment of Dominik Tarczynski on migration in Europe. And I want to remind you, in 2003, March 17, Poland sent 2,000 soldiers to destabilize the Middle East, invade their lands, and create the very migrants he doesn't want coming to his country. I am against open borders for any sovereign nation, especially mine here in America. I have seen what has happened when you allow people who have not been screened properly or came into the country legally, the amount of crime they can commit because they are desperate people from very traumatic places in the world. Many of them have PTSD and have seen corruption beyond our wildest nightmares. And coming to America is like being able to pillage a candy store. And it's the same thing in Europe. But you leaders need to look in the mirror first and call it out. And that is my argument to Dominik Tarczynski. And this is the Bek Lover podcast, where you might just learn a thing or two about life.